Hi everyone. In today's video I want to share with you my favorite cantrips, or the ones I have found to be the most useful over the course of playing over 150 hours. This is not a definitive list, and it's mostly based on my personal opinion and my personal use case in the game. I realize our adventures may vary, so if you would put something else in this list, please share it in the comments. I enjoy hearing from you all. I tried to challenge myself and narrow it down to a top 7. So let's get started with number 7. Number 7 is Shillelagh, hope I say that right. This is a fun cantrip, but it is specific towards druids and nature clerics, those who benefit anyway from wisdom. What's great about it, it's first of all, it only requires a bonus action to cast. For 10 turns it buffs a club, great club or a quarterstaff you are wielding. It enchants the weapon so that it now does 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier damage and uses your wisdom modifier on attack rolls instead of strength or dexterity. Especially early game for a druid or a nature cleric, this does good damage and is also fun to play around with if you are a magic user that can do damage in melee range as well. And I like the flexibility and potential of such things. Number 6. At number 6 I really should be mentioning at least one of the light spells on this list as well. And of the 3 being Dancing Light, Light or Produce Flame, I prefer Produce Flame. And while you cannot cast it on another ally, it does not require concentration like Dancing Light, and it allows for the dealing of a little bit of damage as well. Produce Flame costs an action and you summon a flame into your hand. This flame illuminates 3 meters and that can be held in your hand for 99 turns. At the cost of another action, you can throw the flame and it does 1d8 fire damage. If you throw the flame on the same turn that you summon it, it does not cost an action to throw. I highly recommend this one for characters who don't have dark vision, since it can negate the disadvantage or advantage your enemy has on you for not seeing as well as your opponent, or when the darkness spell is being cast. Number 5. At number 5, one I don't hear so very often from people and I think is overlooked pretty often, is Bone Chill. This cantrip is a ranged attack cantrip that does 1d8 necrotic damage. Spell's damage increases by 1d8 when you reach the 5th level, so that's 2d8 then, and at 10th level 3d8 of necrotic damage. It also puts a debuff on the target for 2 turns. The debuff prevents the target from healing. If the target is an undead, the debuff also imposes disadvantage on attack rolls, which means they are more likely to miss. Undead enemies are pretty common in my experience, so in these situations the use of Bone Chill is very awesome. I also use this cantrip all the time on boss fights, just to make sure they don't heal up, prolonging the fight unnecessarily. I always have someone in my party with this cantrip. Number 4. At number 4, Eldritch Blast. I was thinking about putting this one first place, but the reason I didn't is that it's only available to the Warlock. Technically, every class can pick it up via the spell Sniper feat, but you lose out on some great bonuses that, without having those, it does not make it better than Ray of Frost, Bone Chill or Firebolt in my opinion. But yeah, as a Warlock, Eldritch Blast is the best cantrip and an easy number 1. But based on the lack of accessibility, I have to put it a little lower. At higher level, it does 3 blasts in one cast, so 3 separate hits of 1d10 force damage, and it applies pushback and potentially more damage if you get Eldritch Invocation, Agonizing Blast, and Repelling Blast, which is highly recommended. Agonizing Blast means you add your Charisma modifier to the damage, which if you hit 3 blasts in one cast, you add 3 times, which is insane really. Also, it being force damage is useful for breaking down brittle walls and moving certain objects. The pushback effect from the Repelling Blast invocation can also make short work of enemies by pushing them into chasms or high spots. Number 3. At number 3, Ray of Frost. I used it pretty commonly. This is a ranged attack cantrip that does 1d8 cold damage and applies a debuff on the target that reduces their movement by 3 meters. The spell damage increases by 1d8 every 5th level, so 2d8 at level 5, and then at 10th level 3d8 of damage. A useful tip with Ray of Frost is that if the target has the wet status and is vulnerable to cold and lightning damage, it will sustain double the damage from this cantrip. So it can be very useful to make targets wet and then use this cantrip. It can also be cast on liquid surfaces like blood or water to create an ice ground effect, which can knock enemies prone on movement, ending their turn. The damage is mediocre, but the debuff and ground effect are nice to have. I really recommend this cantrip though. Number 2. At number 2, the Firebolt cantrip is pretty straightforward. You hurl a mote of fire. And I know it's pretty generic, I did use it a lot of times though. The spell damage is pretty good. It increases by 1d10 when you reach the 5th level, so 2d10 at level 5, and at the 10th level it does 3d10 damage. I do use it a lot since a lot of races and classes have access to this one. The High Elf and the High Half Elf learn this one as a race, and the Wizard, Sorcerer, Arcane Trickster and Eldritch Knight learn this one too. So it is pretty common and easy to pick up. It's a pretty good cantrip since it does pretty okay damage and it can ignite barrels and flammable surfaces. It can also remove icy surfaces in case you are standing in one. Number 1. So this brings me to my number 1 most used cantrip, and this may not come as a surprise to anyone, and that is Guidance. Although Guidance has no immediate benefit in combat, Guidance is a single target touch range buff for yourself or allies. While it is active, the target receives a 1d4 on skill checks, and it stays active for 10 rounds, or as long as you maintain the concentration. So this means that you can roll a little d4 dice on top of the result as a bonus when out in the world exploring, persuading, investigating, lockpicking and so forth. There is no limit to the amount of times you can use it, and there are 0 drawbacks. There is really no reason why not to cast it all the time. I am not sure if they should have designed this a little differently, but as it is now, it's certainly my most used cantrip. So, what do you think of my top 7? Do you agree with it? Let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching. Like and subscribe if you like Baldur's Gate 3 content, and see you all in the next video. Bye.